Okay, everyone, and welcome to week 4. So, week 4, topic 4. We're going to look at microorganisms. We're going to start learning about those today. All right, so microorganisms or microbes are really important because they live within our bodies, they live on our bodies, they influence our health, and they also are very important for life on this planet. So microorganisms are everywhere. They do things like break down the organisms. We use microorganisms to make antibiotics. We use microorganisms to make food, okay? So microorganisms are very, very important with regards to life on this planet, okay? Now, we're going to look at microbiology, and microbiology just looks at the study of microorganisms. So you know what an organism is. So a microorganism is just an organism that you need a microscope for, okay? So that they're so tiny that they can't be seen with the naked eye, all right? And they are everywhere. And here are some examples of where they all live. They live everywhere. Okay, so let's have a look at the different groups of microbes, okay, or microorganisms. We have two main categories. These guys here, pardon me, these are microorganisms that their bodies or themselves are not made of cells, okay? Yes, there are such things. And there are microorganisms here that are made up of cells, okay? So there are two major categories. Ones that are made up of cells and ones that are not made up of cells. Cells, no cells. So let's have a look at those. Let's have a look at the microorganisms that are not made up of cells. Okay, now these, there are 3 examples. You guys only need to know about viruses, but if you're really, really keen, maybe you can put a question up on the discussion board about what these other ones do or how these other ones are structured. But the ones that we're only going to look at are going to be viruses. Okay, so a virus is not considered to be alive, okay, because it's not made of cells and it cannot reproduce itself, okay. A virus is essentially some DNA or RNA wrapped up in a protein coat, okay? Some of them have other bits associated with their structure. For example, you can have an envelope and a spike, but essentially the main idea or the main structure of a virus is some genetic material in a protein coat, okay? Viruses affect everything, okay? Some viruses cause disease and some of them do not cause disease. Let's have a look at COVID, okay, because COVID is a virus. Let's have a look and see what it does. So here is COVID and this is your cell, okay? This is the cell membrane and this is the cytoplasm. What COVID does is that it actually goes into our cells. And once it goes in there, it kind of unravels. And when COVID goes into our cells, it unravels and uses all of our cellular organelles or machinery to make more copies of itself. See? It uses all of these things and it's going to make copies of itself. And then those copies come back out of it. Okay? So COVID can't replicate on its own. It needs to use our cells' machines in order to be able to make copies of itself and then come back out again. When a virus enters our cells, it causes damage. And if you have lots and lots of these virus particles coming out, eventually the cell will die. Okay, let's have a look at this graphic here. Look at this. This virus lasts for 24 hours, okay, at this temperature. Look at this. It could last for 21 days, okay? Look at that. So how does this relate to healthcare? Well, we need to be mindful of all microorganisms that are all around us, and we need to make sure that our PPE is on point, because we need to be able to control these microorganisms in a healthcare setting. Yeah, it's pretty interesting, isn't it? All right, so like I said before, viruses can't make copies themselves on their own. They have to go into our cells and use all our stuff. Viruses have either DNA or RNA. They don't have both, okay? Whereas our cells have both. They can't make their own stuff. They can't make their own energy. They can't make their own proteins. They have to use all of our cells' gear, okay? We're going to look at that in a minute. But the problem why it's hard to make drugs to kill viruses is because viruses hide in our own cells. So the drugs can't find them if they're inside our own cells. But as we saw before, viruses can live a long time outside of their host cell, so we have to be mindful of that. All right, these guys you don't need to know about for this subject, but put a question up on the discussion board if you're interested. So these are the microbes that are not made up of cells, and then these are the ones that are made up of cells. So there's two kinds of microbes that their bodies are made up of cells. One kind is called prokaryote and the other one is called eukaryote. The difference between the two is very simple. Prokaryote cells don't have a nucleus. They don't have a nucleus made out of membrane that holds all of their genetic material. So all of their genetic material kind of floats around like spaghetti. Our cells are eukaryote cells, okay? And we do have a membrane-bound nucleus which holds our genetic material. These cells are just thought of as being older, and these are more like evolutionary advanced because we have membrane-bound nucleus and these don't. All right, so let's have a look at a couple of cellular microbe examples. We've got prokaryotes. There's a couple of kind of categories below those. We're going to look at bacteria because that's the most appropriate to healthcare. Archaea don't really infect humans. And then eukaryotes, we're going to look at fungi and protozoa because algae don't usually infect people. All right, so remember a bacterium or bacteria is an organism whose whole body is just one cell, okay? So they're made up of cells, but just one, okay? So can you see here how it's a prokaryote, because there is no nucleus. See, look at the genetic material floating around like spaghetti, okay? So there are certain things that bacteria have that allow them to survive in the world. For example, look, they have a tail. They can make them swim around. They've got ribozymes, so they can make proteins. They have pili, which are little kind of thorns coming out of them, all right? They also have capsules, some of them do, and that's kind of protection, like a coat of armour. And one of the most important things about bacteria is that they have a cell wall. So you know how our cells have a plasma membrane? Well, bacteria have a plasma membrane and then a cell wall on the top of that, because that is like a coat of armour, and we don't have a cell wall. Okay. All right, a little bit more about bacteria. They don't have a nucleus, single cells, so their whole body is just one cell. Oh, and we already saw this information. I think that was just repeated, just a different picture. Can you see the plasma membrane there? See how the pili are like our cilia? And then you've got the cell wall sitting on top of that. And then you've got the capsule if you have one sitting on top of that. So this bacteria would be pretty hard to kill. Like I said before, plasma membrane and a cell wall. Now, the bacterial cell wall is kind of very, very important for healthcare, okay? Because there are certain antibiotics that we need to use in order to kill bacteria that have a certain kind of cell wall. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. What is a cell wall? A cell wall is something that sits on in addition to the plasma membrane. And it's made up of something called peptidoglycan. Okay, that's number one. The bacterial cell wall is in addition to the plasma membrane, and it's made up in peptidoglycan. And there are two different kinds of variations of cell wall. Okay? In bacteria that are gram-negative, look, you've got the plasma membrane, you've got a thin layer of peptidoglycan, then you have something else on the top. These type of bacteria are called gram-negative bacteria. But look at this one. Here is your plasma membrane, and look at the thick peptidoglycan over the top there. Now that is a hardcore cell wall. And if you are this kind of bacteria, you are called a gram-positive bacteria. The reason why we need to know about the different kinds of cell walls, whether you're gram-positive or gram-negative, is because different antibiotics work on different types of bacteria. Okay? And for example, gram-positive bacteria, this is this guy here, we can kill them off better with antibiotics that target peptidoglycan. So if we give someone a drug that destroys this, we can kill the bacteria. So that's an effective use of pharmaceuticals to get rid of that microorganism. But if you are a gram-negative bacteria, okay, you don't have a thick layer of peptidoglycan, so the drug molecule has to do something else. It has to work another way. The way that it works is that it goes into these channels in here. Okay? So, for your purposes, you just need to know the difference between gram-positive and gram-negative with regards to the cell wall, and the fact that different antibiotics are designed for different kinds of bacteria. All right, so we know about bacteria and their cell wall. Something that maybe you did not know about is that bacteria have things called endospores. Okay? Now, when a bacteria knows that it's going to die because it's in a bad environment, it's not going to survive, what it does is that it packages up a little packet of its genetic material and leaves it there. Okay? So just like you watch the movie Superman, you know how Superman's parents put Superman in a capsule and then let him go because the planet was being destroyed? It's kind of the same thing. So an endospore is like a little escape capsule that holds the genetic information and sits there waiting until the conditions are good again to live. Yeah? It's just a little kind of safety kind of mechanism. And then so this bacteria will die, and then when the conditions are good again, the endospore will actually come back to life and starts to make a new bacterium. Okay. Okay, so we looked at bacteria. Their cell bodies are made up of just one cell. Let's have a look at protozoa. Okay, again, these are made of one cell, but this cell is actually has a membrane-bound nucleus, so they're kind of advanced. So these protozoa are like Giardia and Malaria. They can infect you, and they also have quite a sophisticated life cycle. Okay, so for example, Giardia, you can get it from drinking the water, and then this particular protozoa actually multiplies in your intestine and then goes back out of you in your feces, and then it can actually go in the water and someone else can drink that, and then the cycle continues. Okay. So as malaria is a little bit more complicated, but essentially the same thing. Okay. Protozoa, live in blood or your tissues, and it can be transmitted through a different vector. So we can have a look at that in a bit more if you're interested in the life cycle of malaria. But I think that for now, I just think you need to understand that protozoa are single-celled, and they can actually live as a parasite in humans. Okay, so we've done protozoa. We're not going to do algae. Let's have a look at fungi and yeast. So fungi are multicellular organisms, so they're made up of many, many cells. Everyone has seen a mushroom, okay? A yeast is a type of fungus, okay? And these fungus can infect our bodies, okay? So here we go, athlete's foot is a type of fungal infection, so is oral thrush, okay? So we need different drugs, okay? So we can't give someone an antibiotic to kill off a fungi because an antibiotic is designed to kill bacteria. We need to give them an antifungal. You can't give someone an antifungal who has a viral infection. We have to give them an antiviral drug. All right. So now that we know all of the different kinds of microorganisms, we could probably go on to the next section.